In 1863, a photographer whose name has never been recovered was commissioned to document the inmates of Bodmin Workhouse in Cornwall. The resulting image, a single album in print, now held in a private collection, shows 14 residents arranged in 2 rows before the workhouse entrance. 13 of them appear exactly as you would expect for a mid-Victorian institutional photograph. Rigid posture, dull expressions, hands clasped or resting at their sides. But the 14th figure, standing at the far right of the back row, is different. Her hands are missing. Not obscured, not tucked behind her back, not blurred by movement. The sleeves of her workhouse dress extend to where her wrists should be, and then, nothing. The fabric simply ends, and beyond it, the stone wall behind her is clearly, cleanly visible, as though her hands were never there at all. This is the only known anomaly in the photograph, and it has never been explained. Let us begin with what the image itself tells us. The photograph is composed with the rigid formality typical of the 1860s. The front row is seated on a low wooden bench. The back row stands. Every figure is positioned with deliberate symmetry, suggesting the photographer arranged them carefully before exposing the plate. The woman at the far right of the back row is dressed identically to the others. Same coarse linen, same bonnet, same dark shawl draped across the shoulders. Her face is in focus. Her expression is neutral, perhaps slightly downcast. She is not moving. There is no motion blur anywhere on her figure. And yet, where her hands should be, resting at her sides, visible below the cuffs of her sleeves, there is only the gray texture of the wall behind her. The rest of her arms are fully visible. The fabric of her sleeves is sharp and well-defined. The transition is not gradual, it is abrupt. One moment there is cloth, the next there is stone. No other figure in the photograph exhibits any irregularity whatsoever. Return your attention to the image. Count the figures. 14. Trace the back row from left to right. The last woman stands slightly apart from the others, perhaps 6 inches of space between her shoulder and the man beside her. Her posture is straight, her bonnet is neatly tied. Everything about her is ordinary, except the missing hands. Now, in 1971, a local historian named Gerald Fenton published a monograph on Cornish workhouse records. Buried in an appendix was a transcription of a document from the Bodmin Board of Guardians, dated November the 18th, 1863. It was a brief incident report, filed by the workhouse master, a man named Thomas Chenoweth. The report states, and I will read the relevant passage precisely, quote, "One female inmate, admitted under the name Mary Tregelles, was observed by the photographer to present an unusual aspect about the hands. The photographer did request that she withdraw from the composition. She refused. The photograph was taken as arranged." End quote. Chenoweth does not elaborate on what unusual aspect means. He does not say her hands were injured, or deformed, or bandaged. He says only unusual aspect. And the photographer, whose name, remember, is not recorded, wanted her removed from the picture. She refused. Consider what that means in the context of a Victorian workhouse. Inmates did not refuse. They had no authority to refuse anything. And yet Mary Tregelles refused. And the workhouse master recorded her refusal without apparent consequence, as though he, too, did not wish to press the matter. Return to the photograph. She stands at the far right, slightly apart. Her face betrays nothing. The missing hands remain exactly as they are. Not hidden, not explained, simply absent. The wall shows through. In 2004, a photographic conservator named Dr. Helen Ashworth examined the original album in print under magnification as part of a broader survey of Victorian institutional photography. Her findings, published in a conservation journal with limited circulation, are specific. She confirmed that the plate shows no signs of manual retouching in the area of the hands. No scraping, no overpainting, no chemical bleaching. The emulsion layer is continuous and undisturbed across the entire region where the hands should appear. Dr. Ashworth noted, and this is critical, that the stone wall texture visible through the space where the hands should be is perfectly consistent with the wall texture visible elsewhere in the image. The grain, the mortar lines, the slight discoloration of the stone, all continuous, as though the hands were simply not there when the light hit the plate. She offered no explanation. In her published notes, she described the anomaly as, quote, optically consistent with absence rather than removal, end quote. Absence rather than removal. There is one more detail. The Bodmin Workhouse admission ledger for 1863 survives in the Cornwall Record Office. The entry for Mary Tregelles is dated March the 7th of that year. Her age is listed as 41. Her previous parish is listed as Lanhydrock. Her occupation is listed as seamstress. A seamstress, a trade that requires hands. The admission record contains a column for physical condition upon entry. For most inmates, this column reads able-bodied, or infirm, or occasionally lame. For Mary Tregelles, the column is blank, not marked as able-bodied, not marked as infirm, not marked as anything, simply left empty, as though the admitting officer began to write something, and then did not. She appears in no subsequent record, no discharge, no death entry, no transfer. After March of 1863, Mary Tregelles exists only in this photograph, standing at the far right of the back row, slightly apart from the others, her bonnet neatly tied, her face calm, her sleeves ending where her wrists should begin, and beyond them, only the wall. The image remains in its private collection. It has been examined 3 times in the last 50 years. Each examination has confirmed the same thing. The missing hands are not a defect of the plate. They are not a result of damage or retouching or double exposure. They are simply not there. 14 people stood before Bodmin Workhouse in 1863. 13 of them left a complete image on the photographic plate. 1 did not. The question that remains, and it is the only question that has ever mattered about this photograph, is not how. It is why. Why are Mary Tregelles' hands missing from this image? And why did no one in that workhouse, not the photographer, not the master, not the board of guardians, ever attempt to explain it? If you have a theory, leave it below. But consider this first. Dr. Ashworth used a very specific word. Absence, not disappearance, not erasure. Absence, as though the hands were never there to begin with.